Welcome back for a second episode of Growing Giant Bangkok Guava from cuttings. It's day 131. Many of my leaves are still languishing and dying. They're turning red and yellow, so I'm applying imidacloprid to try to get rid of the spider mites. I see a lot of webbings. Very few of those, if ever, belong to spiders. Most of them are from spider mites, and you can't even see them most of the time. You need bright light and to examine them up close, and you need sharp eyes as well, maybe even magnification devices, but you can definitely see the webbings that the fifth instar adults make. So I'm getting rid of this potting mix. It's day 141, and this came like this in this pot with this kind of potting mix. It was very wet and cold back when I bought this in January, where I bought it from. So I'm scraping off all the dead leaves, these little weeds, which in and of themselves are fine, but it's mostly this potting mix that I want to get rid of. You can see the root ball encircling. The root ball is well developed. So the roots encircle like this because they need oxygen to breathe and rotting organic material such as the shredded bark of potting mix and things like sphagnum peat moss. Those use up all the oxygen microbes do when they decompose that stuff slowly over time, and that means the roots can't breathe. They release toxic gases and other byproducts that are harmful for roots as well. So that's why I used to lose a lot of plants, but in 2019, the current year, I've been doing a few transplants, and this is one of the last ones to get into a sand and soil mixture, and I've seen really good results. I would highly recommend this, and I'm never going to use potting mix again. It produces a lot of fungus gnats and parasites. It houses spider mites and other nasty pests. So as you can see, there's fairly healthy root ball, I would say. Well, it could be doing better. I think it will do a lot better once I get it into sand and soil, but that's not a bad number of roots is what I'm saying. You never want to dig up your root ball and find out that only 30 or 20% of the entire soil mass in there was even being used. So this thing is too full. It's full of 50% sand, 50% clay soil mixture from the local hills. I live in San Diego, California. So I mixed it in about a 50 to 50% ratio. I got the sand from a bag from Lowe's. All these big box stores sell 50-pound bags of sand, and they're not too expensive. It's more about they're harder to carry, so you need a fair bit of strength, especially if you need some stairs to climb. So as you can see, this half sand, half soil mixture immediately provides the anchorage. So as you can see, the plant is now well anchored despite this pot not even being close to full. The sand and the soil provide a lot of structure for a plant's root system, a lot of weight as well. So you don't have that problem that you'll always have with potting mix after a few months or a few years, which is the organic matter keeps rotting away and then the roots have no support, so the plant basically falls over. I've seen this even with native weed species or perennials, annuals that have grown before, and I'm definitely even seeing that now, even with a Joshua tree. So I've transplanted that, and the results remain to be seen, but for the other plants, I've gotten really good results. So I have all these bags of old pots and potting mix. Some pots are better than others. Some pots crack away after a while. So yeah, like that reddish orange pot in the background in the corner there, that kind of a pot tends to crack, whereas a lot of these beige watering tray ones that I have, like the one below it and the one the Joshua tree is in the background, those are really good. They're very sturdy. So I think these pots are actually okay. They're kind of on the small side, but for cutting of this size, I think it'll do fine. I used to focus too much on thinking about the future and how much soil mixture volume that I wanted. Well, back then I always used potting mix, and that was the wrong approach. And people would often say, you're overpotting it or you're overwatering it, that's not really the problem. The problem is the roots can't breathe and they're getting killed off by the constant decomposition of organic matter in potting mix. So it's day 169, 28 days later. My guava cutting looks healthier. Some of those old leaves are very diseased. I should probably just throw them away. But it definitely will help to have leaf litter on top where the fungus can decompose it and bring those nutrients to your root system, the mycorrhizal hyphae from the mushroom species that grow typically underground and are undoubtedly present in the soil that I bought in from the outside. So they should form a complex with the root system. And if I just sprinkle some organic material on the top, such as fresh dead leaves, then those nutrients will get back in. But for now, none of that is my concern. I just want to rehabilitate this plant. There's again a lot of webbings and a lot of diseased leaves, so I will prune those away, but they are falling off by themselves very regularly, almost every day. So I think this plant is on its way to recovery. The weather's finally getting a little warmer, so this series has gotten off to a very slow start, especially for a cutting where everything's ready to go, and I suspect the root system was already as developed as you saw when I unrooted it compared to when I first bought it. So when you buy these from a nursery, they just want to save money and not have all the shipping, transportation issues associated with a heavy weight caused by natural dirt. So of course potting mix is a logical choice. So day 180, it's 39 days after the transplant. Have some little weeds going on there. Top of the soil looks a little on the dry side, but as you can see, there's a lot of new leaf growth, and almost all of the dead leaves have either fallen off or been pruned away for aesthetic purposes. So I think this plant is well on its way to recovery. Everything looks a lot better. And you can see that the coloration of the leaves is steadily improving. It's now sort of a light green versus all those tones of yellow and red before. Only the petioles and fresh stems are red, which is the way they're supposed to be. It looks very beautiful. So you can see some leaves coming out of the nodes. I think this thing is on the upside, and we're going to be pleasantly surprised over the next few weeks. And you can see in the lower left there's a weed that's just sagging in the potting mix. So potting mix, sometimes you think everything needs more water, and then you water, and that spurs a period of decomposition, and that uses up all the oxygen. Then the plant roots can't breathe and the roots die, and when the root system dies, everything else follows very quickly. If you have very healthy root conditions, then the plant can always come back and thrive, even if the foliage takes a lot of damage from parasites or external chemical or temperature factors. So things are looking pretty good, and this episode is basically proof that potting mix is not the right growth medium for most plants. In fact, it's not anything natural anyway, which is what a lot of people harp on anyway, is your methods aren't natural, or this method isn't natural, that method isn't natural, so potting mix isn't natural. So, well, neither is growing plants in pots, but I think we can pick and choose some of the factors that suit us and some that don't. So it's day 192. As you can see, I've essentially overwatered, so to speak, and even these weeds are coming back, although I tend to kind of drown them because they get buried under the water when they're very small like that. But they're growing, and you can see there's a lot more leaves. The coloration has improved by so much. It's just night and day in the last 7 weeks. I haven't applied any fertilizer. Granted, there are lots of nutrients in any kind of fresh dirt that you provide, but I've read reports that some plants can even grow in pure sand or nearly pure sand. So I think out of all the factors, nutrition is one of the most overrated ones for early plant development. You really just need oxygenated, well-drained, well, not well-drained in terms of like water has to flow right through it, but you need oxygen to be able to get in. And actually, when you water a lot like I just did with some overflow, when that water dries out of the soil, it pulls fresh atmosphere, fresh oxygen into the soil and sand with it. So you can see the growth is just amazing now. This cutting is getting significantly taller. The leaves are in abundance and the coloration looks amazing. I have no doubt that this will grow a lot over the rest of 2019. So definitely consider getting rid of your potting mix. I don't have the fungus gnat problem that I had before, and all my plants are looking a lot better. I'm not going to get flowers or guavas anytime soon, but this plant is finally on the right track, as are all of my other plants. So thanks for watching, and please stay tuned for further updates.